Hey everyone, welcome back. While I'm building in this cozy little Minecraft world, we're diving into stories tonight that prove family loyalty has some seriously dark limits. There's something oddly satisfying about watching lies unravel, especially when the people spinning them think they've got everything under control. Before we begin, I want to take a second to thank everyone who's been supporting the channel through your views, comments, and encouragement. Your support genuinely keeps my motivation and this channel going. Tonight's collection is packed with betrayals that start as whispers and end in explosions. Secret marriages, stolen identities, families that gaslight with a smile, and revenge that's been simmering quietly in the background. So get comfortable, maybe grab a snack, and let's jump into the chaos. My family always praised my brother for taking time to work on himself. It started about 6 months ago when he suddenly announced he was going off the grid for a while. No warning, no real explanation, beyond some vague talk about needing to reset and reconnect with who he really was. My parents were weirdly supportive about the whole thing, which should have been my first red flag, because they'd never been the therapy positive types before. They told everyone he was at some wellness retreat in Colorado. Total digital detox, no phones allowed, completely off the grid for his mental health journey. My mum would get misty-eyed talking about how brave he was for prioritizing his healing. My dad would nod along and say things like, "It takes real strength to admit you need help." I actually felt guilty for not being more like him, for not having the courage to step back and work on myself like that. For 6 months, I believed every word. I defended him at family gatherings when cousins would ask why he couldn't even send a postcard. I explained the whole no contact thing to friends who thought it was weird. I even posted something on social media about how proud I was of him for choosing himself. Looking back, I want to crawl into a hole. Then I ran into his ex-girlfriend at a coffee shop downtown. We'd always gotten along pretty well even after they broke up, so I smiled and waved. But the look she gave me was pure venom. She walked right up to my table and just stood there staring at me like I'd personally insulted her entire bloodline. I asked if she was okay, genuinely confused about what I could have possibly done. She tilted her head and said, "You know he's in county jail, right? For fraud. Just like that. No build-up, no sugarcoating." The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually laughed at first because obviously she had to be joking or mistaken or something. But she wasn't laughing. She looked at me with something between pity and disgust and said she couldn't believe my family was still lying about it. Then she walked out. I sat there for probably 20 minutes just staring at my coffee. My hands were shaking. I pulled out my phone and started searching, but I didn't even know what to look for. County jail records? His name plus arrest? Nothing made sense. This had to be some kind of misunderstanding, or maybe she was just bitter about the breakup and trying to mess with me. But I couldn't shake it. That night, I drove to my parents' house unannounced. They were watching TV in the living room like it was any other evening. I asked them point blank where my brother really was. The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know before they even opened their mouths. My mum started crying immediately. Not like gentle tears, full-on sobbing into her hands. My dad just sat there staring at the floor and I watched his whole face crumble. He asked how I found out, and I told them about running into the ex. That's when they broke down completely and admitted they'd been lying to protect the family reputation. Here's where it gets absurd. My brother hadn't embezzled some small amount he could claim was a mistake or misunderstanding. $80,000. He'd been systematically stealing from his employer for over a year, falsifying records and covering his tracks until he got sloppy and they caught him. The company pressed charges immediately, and he'd been in county jail this entire time, awaiting trial and sentencing. My parents had been visiting him every single weekend. Every Saturday morning, when my mom said she was going to yoga and my dad said he was playing golf, they were driving 2 hours to sit in a visiting room and see their son behind glass. Then they'd drive home and tell me and everyone else how well he was doing at his retreat, how much clarity he was finding, how the no contact rule was really helping him grow. I asked why they didn't tell me. My dad said they didn't want to burden me with it, didn't want me to worry or have to lie to people, as if finding out like this was somehow better. As if I wouldn't have rather known the truth from the beginning than be made to look like an idiot defending a fraud to everyone I knew. But that wasn't even the worst part. I asked how they were paying for his legal fees because I knew those had to be substantial. The lawyer alone probably cost more than most people make in 6 months. My mum wouldn't look at me. My dad cleared his throat and said they'd had to make some difficult financial decisions. I felt my stomach drop. I asked what that meant. He said they'd used my college fund, not borrowed, not taken a loan against. Used, as in gone, as in the money I'd been saving since I was 16, the money grandparents had contributed to, the money that was supposed to help me finish my degree without drowning in debt, had been funneled directly into keeping my brother out of prison. They didn't ask me. They didn't tell me. They just decided that protecting him was more important than my future and expected me to what? Understand? Be grateful they were keeping the family secret? If you've made it this far into the chaos, you're as addicted to Reddit drama as I am. Make sure to subscribe and tell me where you're watching from in the comments. Now, back to this family implosion. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just stood up and walked out. My mom called after me, but I kept walking. I sat in my car in their driveway for almost an hour trying to process what I'd just learned. My entire family had been living a lie, and I was the only one not in on it. Every conversation for 6 months had been built on deception. Every time I'd proudly told someone about my brother's journey, I'd been spreading their cover story. 2 weeks later, my brother got released early for good behavior. Apparently, he'd been a model prisoner, kept his head down, didn't cause problems. My parents were ecstatic. They planned this whole welcome home party like he was returning from war or something. Balloons, a banner, his favorite foods. They invited the whole extended family. They called me 3 days before to make sure I'd be there. My mom actually said it would mean so much to him to have his sister there, supporting him as he started this new chapter. New chapter. Like he'd been on some spiritual journey instead of serving time for stealing 80 grand. I told them I wouldn't be attending. My mom tried to guilt me, said I was being selfish and holding a grudge. My dad said everyone makes mistakes and family is supposed to forgive. I hung up on both of them. The day of the party, I started making calls. I called my aunt first, told her the whole truth, then my uncle, then my cousins. I methodically went through every single person who'd been fed the wellness retreat story and told them exactly where my brother had actually been and what he'd actually done. I told them about the embezzlement, the jail time, my college fund, all of it. The reactions were mixed. Some people were horrified and immediately on my side. Others thought I was being vindictive and airing dirty laundry that should have stayed private. A few accused me of lying or exaggerating. My parents' friends circled the wagons and defended them for doing what any parent would do. What happened next? Nobody saw it coming. Half the family stopped speaking to me entirely. Group chats I'd been in for years suddenly went quiet when I joined. Invitations to family events dried up. My mom left me a voicemail saying I'd ruined my brother's chance at a fresh start and destroyed their reputation in the community. My dad sent a text saying I was no longer welcome at their house until I apologized. But the other half, the ones who saw through the lies, they reached out. My cousin offered to help me look into legal options for getting my college money back. My aunt said she'd always thought something was off about the whole retreat story. My grandmother, who's normally the keep the peace at all costs type, called my parents and apparently tore into them for over an hour about lying to the family and stealing from their own daughter. My brother tried to reach out once. He sent me this long message about how he'd made terrible choices and was working to be better and hoped I could find it in my heart to forgive him someday. He didn't mention my college fund, didn't offer to pay it back or acknowledge that his legal defense had cost me my future. Just vague platitudes about redemption and second chances. I never responded. What was there to say? Sorry you got caught? Glad you're working on yourself now that you have to? I hope the 80,000 was worth it. Now half the family isn't speaking to me, but at least I'm not living in their lie anymore. I'm not standing at gatherings listening to my parents spin their fiction and pretending everything is fine. I'm not complicit in their cover-up or their twisted version of family loyalty that apparently means protecting the golden child at everyone else's expense. Sometimes I wonder if I should have just kept my mouth shut, let them have their party, let the family believe whatever they wanted to believe, avoid all this drama and division. But then I remember sitting in that coffee shop, remember the look on his ex's face, remember finding out my entire college fund was gone, and I know I made the right choice. They wanted me to be part of their performance. They wanted me to smile and nod and welcome home the reformed soul who'd found himself in Colorado. But I'm done being a supporting character in someone else's redemption arc, especially when it was built on lies and funded with my future. But family lies are just the beginning. Sometimes the person you trust most has been playing you from day one. 3 years with Jake, and I thought I knew everything about him. We had plans. We talked about moving in together, adopting a dog, the whole 9 yards. I knew his coffee order, his Netflix password, the way he'd get quiet when he was stressed. I thought we were solid. So when his mother showed up at my apartment on a random Tuesday afternoon, I figured she was dropping off leftovers, or maybe wanted to chat about Jake's upcoming birthday. I was not prepared for what came next. She didn't even wait for me to offer her a seat. She just walked straight to my kitchen table, pulled out a chair, and sat down like she owned the place. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a check. Not a card, not a gift, a check for $15,000. She slid it across the table toward me like we were in some kind of crime movie, her expression cold and businesslike. "Take this and disappear," she said. "Don't contact Jake. Don't tell anyone what you know." Then she folded her hands and waited, like she'd just made me an offer I couldn't refuse. I just stared at her. I had no idea what she was talking about. What I didn't know anything, except that Jake's mom had apparently lost her mind. I asked her what she meant, and she gave me this look, like I was playing dumb on purpose. She said she wasn't going to spell it out for me, but that I needed to take the money and walk away quietly. For everyone's sake. I told her I wasn't taking anything until she explained what the hell was going on. That's when she sighed, like I was making this harder than it needed to be, and said, "Jake is engaged to someone else, and you need to stay out of it." I'm pretty sure my brain just stopped working for a solid 10 seconds. Engaged? Jake? The guy who'd been sleeping in my bed 3 nights a week? The guy who'd met my parents? Who had a drawer at my place and a toothbrush in my bathroom? I asked her if she was serious, and she didn't even blink. Completely serious. Apparently, Jake had been engaged to some woman named Caroline for over a year. A woman his family approved of. A woman they'd known since college. A woman who checked all the right boxes, came from the right background, had the right career. I was the secret. The side piece. The one he'd been hiding from everyone who mattered. His mom explained it all with this eerie calm, like she was walking me through a business transaction. Jake had been planning to leave Caroline for me. She'd found out and panicked. In her mind, I was the problem. I was the one threatening to ruin her son's reputation, his future, his perfect image. She'd rather pay me off and make me disappear than let Jake blow up his life over someone like me. And yes, she actually said someone like me. I sat there trying to process the fact that the man I loved had been lying to me for at least a year, and his mother thought 15 grand was enough to make me forget about it. Imagine being this confidently wrong. I didn't touch the check. I told her I wanted to hear this from Jake. She said that wasn't going to happen. He didn't know she was here. This was her fixing the situation before it got out of hand. I asked her if Caroline knew about me. She hesitated. That told me everything. Caroline had no idea. Jake had been playing both of us, and his family was so desperate to protect his image that they were willing to bribe me into silence. I looked at that check sitting on my table and felt something snap inside me. I wasn't angry yet. I was just done. I told her to take her money and leave. She didn't move. She said I was making a mistake, that I'd regret this, that if I tried to cause problems, she'd make sure I regretted it. I told her to get out of my apartment before I called the cops. She stood up, grabbed the check, and left without another word. The second the door closed, I grabbed my phone and started digging. It took me less than 10 minutes to find Caroline on social media. She had her profiles locked down, but her engagement photos were public. There she was, smiling next to Jake in front of some fancy venue, wearing a ring I'd never seen. The post was from 8 months ago. I felt sick. I scrolled through her page and found her email in her bio. She ran some kind of lifestyle blog. I sat there staring at that email address for a long time, trying to figure out what to say. Then I just started typing. I kept it simple. I told her who I was. I told her I'd been dating Jake for 3 years. I sent her screenshots of our texts, photos of us together, even a video he'd sent me 2 weeks earlier, where he told me he loved me. I didn't sugarcoat it, and I didn't apologize. I just laid it all out and said she deserved to know the truth. Then I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. She responded 6 hours later, Just 2 words, thank you, then nothing. I didn't hear from her again for 2 days. I didn't hear from Jake either, which told me he had no idea what was coming. I went to work, came home, and waited. I knew it was going to blow up. I just didn't know how fast. Then came the breaking point. Caroline called off the wedding, not privately, not quietly. She posted everything online, every screenshot I'd sent her, every text, every lie. She wrote this long, detailed post about how she'd been with Jake for 5 years, engaged for one, and had no idea he'd been living a double life. She tagged him. She tagged his mum. She tagged half his family. The post went nuclear. Hundreds of comments, shares, people from their social circle, their church, their college friends, all weighing in. Some were supportive, some were brutal. Jake's reputation was destroyed in less than 24 hours. His mum called me the next day, absolutely unhinged. She screamed at me over the phone, saying I'd ruined her son's life, that I'd humiliated their family, that I was spiteful and vindictive, and she was going to sue me for defamation. I let her finish. Then I calmly told her that truth isn't defamation, and if she wanted to take me to court, she was welcome to try. I'd be happy to show a judge the check she tried to bribe me with. She went silent. Then she hung up. I never heard from her again. Jake tried to reach out a week later, a long, rambling text about how things got complicated, and he never meant to hurt anyone, and he was sorry. I didn't respond. I blocked him on everything and moved on. Caroline sent me one more message a few months later. She said she was doing better, that she'd dodged a bullet, that she appreciated me telling her the truth, even though it hurt. We never became friends or anything, but I was glad she got out. The whole thing still feels surreal sometimes. 3 years of my life with someone who was planning a future with someone else, and his family thought they could just pay me to pretend it never happened. The audacity is breathtaking, but at least I'm not the one who married him. Caroline got out. I got out. Jake's the one who ended up alone, with a ruined reputation and a mother who probably still thinks this was all my fault. Speaking of people who lie for a living, wait until you hear what happened when someone's career became collateral damage in a family grudge. I'd been interviewing for months when I finally landed my dream role at a tech startup. Months, endless rounds of interviews, technical assessments, portfolio reviews, the whole exhausting circus. And finally, I got the call. The hiring manager sounded genuinely excited. She told me I was exactly what they were looking for, that the team loved me, that they couldn't wait to have me on board. She asked when I could start. I told her 2 weeks, trying to sound professional while internally screaming with relief. This was it. After all the rejection emails and ghosted applications, I'd actually done it. I celebrated that night. Called my friends, toasted with cheap wine, updated my LinkedIn with that smug little open to new opportunities, switch flipped off. I even started planning my first day outfit, which is something I never do. For 2 glorious days, I felt like I'd finally gotten my life together. Then my phone rang again. Same hiring manager. Different tone. The kind of tone that makes your stomach drop before they even finish the first sentence. We've decided to go in a different direction, she said. Just like that. No explanation. No feedback. Just cold corporate rejection delivered in the same voice that had been warm and welcoming 48 hours earlier. I was devastated. I asked if there was something I could clarify, something I'd done wrong, anything that might change their mind. She just repeated the line, different direction. I hung up and sat on my couch staring at nothing for what felt like hours. Then I opened Instagram, and there it was, my sister's post. A photo of her grinning at the camera with a coffee cup in some trendy cafe. Caption reading, "So excited to start my new job at the exact name of the company that had just rejected me. The same company, the same position." I read it 3 times to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. Comments poured in below. "Congrats! You deserve it. So proud of you." I felt like I was watching my life get stolen in real time, and nobody else could even see it happening. I called HR immediately. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. I got transferred twice before reaching someone who could actually help. I explained everything. The offer, the sudden reversal, my sister's post. The HR rep went quiet for a long moment, and I could hear typing in the background. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. She told me my sister had reached out to them expressing concern about my mental health struggles, that she'd painted this whole picture of me as unstable, unreliable, someone who might not be able to handle the pressure of the role. And then, because we apparently had similar qualifications, she generously offered to step in and take the position herself, to save everyone the trouble. The audacity genuinely took my breath away. She hadn't just stolen my job, she'd torched my reputation to do it. And the HR rep said it so matter-of-factly, like this was just a reasonable sister looking out for family and company interests. I asked how she even knew I'd gotten the offer. Turns out I'd told my parents at dinner the night I got the call, too excited to keep it to myself. She must have been listening. Must have seen an opportunity, and she took it without a second thought. But that wasn't even the worst part. When I started asking more questions, the HR rep admitted my sister had used my portfolio in her application. My references, even specific answers I'd prepped for interview questions, things I'd practiced out loud at home where she could have easily overheard. She'd essentially worn my professional skin and walked right into the job I'd earned. And because she shared my last name and looked similar enough in photos, nobody had thought to double check whether the person they were hiring was actually the person they'd interviewed. I filed a formal complaint that same day. I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I just laid out every single fact in the most professional tone I could manage and told them if they didn't make this right, I'd be pursuing legal action for defamation and fraud. I sent emails, I documented everything. I even got screenshots of her Instagram post before she had a chance to delete it. The company panicked. Within a week, they'd rescinded her offer and sent me a formal apology. They said there had been a terrible misunderstanding, that they took mental health seriously and never should have made assumptions. All the standard corporate damage control language. But here's the thing, they didn't rehire me either. They apologized, sure, they admitted they'd screwed up, but they didn't want the liability of bringing me on after all the chaos. It was too messy, too complicated. So I got an apology and nothing else. My sister lost the job, but I didn't get it back. We both walked away with nothing except her looking like a liar and me looking like someone who caused problems before even starting. This is where patience finally snapped. I reported her to LinkedIn for fraudulent professional activity. I wrote out every detail, attached screenshots, made sure it was all documented in their system. Then I did something I'd been debating for days. I posted about it publicly. I didn't name her directly, but I didn't have to. Anyone who knew us both could connect the dots. I explained what happened in calm, factual terms, how someone close to me had sabotaged my career by lying to an employer, how they'd stolen my work and my credibility, how they'd faced no real consequences while I was left picking up the pieces. The post blew up. People were horrified. Former co-workers reached out offering references and support. A few recruiters even messaged me directly with opportunities. But the fallout with my family was brutal. My parents called me within hours, furious. They said I was airing dirty laundry, that I was trying to ruin my sister's career over a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, as if she'd accidentally stolen my identity and torched my reputation by mistake. I tried to explain. I sent them the emails, the screenshots, everything. They didn't care. They said I was being vindictive, that I should have handled it privately. That family comes first. I told them family doesn't sabotage family, that what she did wasn't a mistake or a misunderstanding. It was calculated and cruel. They didn't want to hear it. My mom actually said I was overreacting, that my sister was just trying to help herself, and I should be happy for her ambition. Ambition, that's what she called it. Not theft, not betrayal. Ambition. I stopped trying to convince them after that. There's no point arguing with people who've already decided you're the villain. My sister never apologized, not once. She sent me one text that just said, "You didn't have to blow this up," like I was the one who'd escalated things, like she hadn't committed fraud and destroyed my professional credibility. I didn't respond. I blocked her number, blocked her on every platform, and moved on. Or at least I tried to. It took another 2 months before I finally landed a different position. Better company, better pay, better team. The hiring manager there had actually seen my LinkedIn post and reached out because she respected how I'd handled the situation. Poetic justice doesn't get much cleaner than that. I started the job and never looked back. My sister, from what I've heard through the family grapevine, is still job hunting. Turns out when you get flagged for professional misconduct, employers tend to notice. Our parents still think I overreacted. They still bring her up at family dinners like nothing happened, still ask when I'm going to forgive her and move on. I just smile and change the subject. Some bridges aren't worth rebuilding, and honestly, I don't miss her. I don't miss the version of my family that chose her lies over my truth either. I've got my career back on track, my integrity intact, and a whole lot less tolerance for people who think family means letting them get away with anything. Betrayal at work is one thing, but imagine discovering your entire workplace has been watching you like a reality show. I thought I was doing fine at work. Not great, maybe not exceptional, but fine. I showed up on time, did my job, stayed in my lane. I wasn't the office star, but I wasn't a problem either. Or so I thought. That illusion shattered in the most humiliating way possible during a completely ordinary Tuesday afternoon meeting. We were in the conference room going over quarterly projections, and my coworker Lisa's laptop died mid-presentation. She asked if anyone had a charger. I didn't, but I offered to let her use mine so she could pull up the slides. She hesitated for just a second, this weird flicker of panic across her face, but then handed it over with a tight smile. I opened her laptop, pulled up the presentation file she'd mentioned, and that's when I saw it. A Slack notification popped up in the corner. The channel name made my stomach drop. Hashtag watching Emma. My name is Emma. I should have ignored it. I should have just pulled up the slides and handed the laptop back. But I couldn't. My hands moved on autopilot. I clicked the notification. The channel opened. 47 members. I scrolled up. Days of messages. Weeks. Months. My brain couldn't process it at first, like I was reading a language I didn't quite understand. But then the words started landing. They were rating my outfits. Actual numbered scores, 1 through 10, with commentary. Someone had written, Emma's doing the same cardigan again. Does she own anything else? Another reply, giving librarian who gave up, 4 out of 10. I felt my face go hot. I kept scrolling. They mocked my presentations. One message said, taking bets now. Does Emma say circle back more than 5 times today? Someone else replied, she hit 6, pay up. There was a running joke about whether I'd cry during performance reviews. Not if, whether. Like it was a foregone conclusion. And then I saw it. Someone had made a bingo card. An actual bingo card. For things I said in meetings. Per my last email. Just wanted to follow up. Let me know if you have questions. Thanks so much. Each phrase in its own square, waiting to be checked off like I was a performing animal. The person who made it had posted, free space is Emma apologizing for something that isn't her fault. 12 people reacted with laughing emojis. I sat there frozen, the laptop screen glowing in my hands, surrounded by my coworkers in that conference room, people who smiled at me in the hallway, who asked about my weekend, who I'd bought coffee for when they were having a rough day. I looked up. Lisa was staring at me, her face pale. She knew I'd seen it. I closed the laptop slowly, handed it back to her without a word, and excused myself from the meeting. No one stopped me. I went straight to the bathroom and locked myself in a stall. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold my phone. I wanted to cry, to scream, to pretend I'd imagined the whole thing. But I hadn't. It was real. They'd been watching me, mocking me, turning me into entertainment. For months, and here's where it gets absurd. I realized I hadn't just seen the channel. I'd taken mental notes of usernames. I knew exactly who was in there. My manager, the team lead I'd trusted with sensitive project updates, the woman I'd confided in about my anxiety, the guy who always complimented my work in public, all of them, performing concern to my face while tearing me apart behind a screen. I went back to my desk, opened my own laptop, and started taking screenshots. I didn't have access to the channel, but I remembered enough. I logged into my email and searched for anything I could use. Slack messages where people referenced inside jokes I hadn't understood. Odd comments that made sense now. I documented everything I could remember. Every username, every cruel comment, every timestamp. Then I went to HR. The HR rep's face changed about 30 seconds into my explanation. She went from polite and patient to genuinely horrified. I showed her what I'd written down, explained what I'd seen, and told her I wanted a full investigation. She said she'd look into it. I told her that wasn't good enough. I wanted records pulled. I wanted accountability. She made a call right there in front of me. By the end of the day, IT had pulled the entire Slack channel history, months of messages, all of it logged, time-stamped, and archived. They couldn't delete it. They couldn't pretend it didn't exist. The investigation took a week. In that week, I came to work every single day and pretended everything was normal. I smiled, I said good morning, I attended meetings, and I watched them squirm because they knew. Word had gotten out that HR was digging into something, and the people in that channel knew exactly what it was. Lisa avoided eye contact. My manager suddenly started being overly friendly, asking if I needed help with anything, complimenting my work. It was pathetic. They thought they could smooth it over. They thought if they were nice enough now, I'd let it go. Then came the breaking point. HR called me in for a follow-up meeting. They'd found everything, the full channel, every message, every joke, every cruel, calculated comment. 11 people were being formally written up. 3 were being terminated, effective immediately. One of them was my direct manager. Another was the team lead. The third was someone from another department who'd apparently joined just to watch the show. The HR rep apologized. She said the behavior was unacceptable, that it violated company policy, and that they wanted to make it right. They offered me a transfer to another team, a raise, an official apology on record. I told her I'd think about it. I didn't need to think about it. I already knew. I couldn't work there anymore. Not because of what they'd done, but because I couldn't unsee it. Every person I passed in the hallway, I'd wonder, were they in the channel? Did they laugh at me? Did they vote on my outfits? I couldn't sit in meetings without imagining a bingo card hovering over my head. I couldn't trust anyone. The company had failed me long before I ever saw that Slack channel, and no raise or transfer was going to fix that. On my last day, I didn't make a scene. I packed my desk quietly, said goodbye to the few people I still believed weren't involved, and left. But before I walked out, I did one final thing. I forwarded every single screenshot, every HR report, every piece of documentation to the company's executive board. I attached a resignation letter that didn't hold back. I detailed the toxic culture, the complicity of management, the failure of leadership to protect employees. I explained exactly how it felt to discover that my workplace had turned me into a spectator sport. I didn't ask for anything. I didn't demand change. I just told them the truth and let them sit with it. 2 months later, I heard through a former coworker that the entire department had been restructured. New management, mandatory sensitivity training, a revised code of conduct. People were pissed. They blamed me, as if I was the problem. As if I'd done something wrong by refusing to be their punching bag. I got a LinkedIn message from one of the people who'd been fired. It just said, "You ruined my career." No apology, no acknowledgement, just anger that I'd held them accountable. I blocked them. I blocked all of them. Imagine being this confidently wrong. Imagine spending months actively bullying a coworker, documenting it in writing, and then being shocked when there are consequences. The audacity is almost impressive. They really thought they were untouchable. They thought cruelty was just harmless fun, that I'd never find out, and even if I did, I'd be too afraid or too polite to do anything about it. They underestimated me, and honestly, that's on them. I'm in a new job now. Better pay, better people, better everything. I don't talk about what happened. I don't need to, but every time I get a Slack notification, I still feel a flicker of nausea. Some scars don't heal cleanly, and that's okay, because I'd rather carry the memory of what I survived than spend one more second pretending I didn't deserve better. And if you think coworkers are ruthless, wait until you see what happens when a boss tries to bury the truth with paperwork. I was my boss's executive assistant, which meant I knew everything. Her schedule, her emails, her personal calls, even the stuff she probably thought she was hiding. That's the thing about being someone's right hand. You see all the cracks before they even realize they're forming. And let me tell you, the cracks in my boss's professional facade were starting to look more like canyons. It started small. Rachel, my boss, was the VP of operations at a mid-sized tech company. She was sharp, demanding, and had a reputation for being untouchable. I'd worked for her for 3 years, and in that time I'd learned to read her moods, anticipate her needs, and basically keep her entire professional life running smoothly. So when her calendar suddenly started filling up with back-to-back 2-hour meetings with David, the head of HR, I noticed immediately. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maybe they were working on some new initiative, restructuring, compliance stuff, whatever. But the meetings kept happening, 3 times a week, like clockwork, always scheduled during lunch or late afternoon, always in his office, never the conference room. And the thing that really caught my attention was that Rachel would come back from these meetings looking flushed, her lipstick slightly smudged, her hair just a little less perfect than when she left. I'm not an idiot. I knew what was going on. But it wasn't my business, right? I was her assistant, not her mother. As long as it didn't affect my job, I was planning to just keep my head down and pretend I didn't notice. That plan lasted about 2 more weeks. One afternoon, Rachel called me into her office. She had this weird energy, like she was trying to seem casual, but was actually wound tight as a drum. There was a legal document sitting on her desk, multiple pages, official-looking letterhead from some law firm I didn't recognize. She slid it across the desk toward me without making eye contact. "Sign this," she said. "Just a formality. Standard confidentiality agreement." I picked it up and started reading. It was an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, but it was incredibly vague. It mentioned protecting confidential company matters, proprietary information, sensitive executive communications, the kind of language that could mean absolutely anything, the kind of language that was clearly designed to cover someone's tracks. I looked up at Rachel and she was watching me with this expression that was trying to be neutral, but came off as desperate. I set the document down. "I'm not signing this," I said, not without understanding exactly what it's protecting. Rachel's face hardened immediately. "This isn't a negotiation," she said. "This is part of your job. If you want to continue working here, you'll sign it." The threat was clear. Sign or get fired. Here's where it gets absurd. I looked her straight in the eye and told her I'd already documented everything and sent it to my personal email. Her schedule, the recurring meetings with David, everything. I said it calmly, like I was just stating a fact, which I was. The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might actually pass out. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "What?" she finally managed to say. "What are you talking about?" I explained that as her assistant, I had access to her calendar, her emails, her phone when she asked me to handle things for her. I'd seen the messages, the photos she'd accidentally left open on her laptop when she asked me to pull up a presentation. I hadn't been snooping, it was just all right there. And yes, I'd backed it all up because I had a feeling something like this might happen. Call it intuition. Rachel sat down heavily in her chair. She looked like someone had just told her the building was on fire. "Do you know who David is married to?" she asked quietly. I shook my head. She laughed, but it was this hollow, bitter sound. "He's married to Jennifer Caldwell. Board of directors. She practically runs this company." "Oh, so we're doing that now?" Yeah, that explained the panic. This wasn't just an affair, this was a career-ending, reputation-destroying, possibly lawsuit-inducing disaster waiting to happen. And Rachel had just tried to legally silence the one person who had all the receipts. That's when everything unraveled. Over the next few days, Rachel became increasingly paranoid. She started watching me like a hawk, questioning everything I did, every email I sent, every conversation I had. She was spiraling, and it was obvious. Then, about a week after our little confrontation, I got called into a meeting with David from HR and another HR rep I didn't know. They told me there had been a complaint. Apparently, I'd been accessing confidential information without authorization and had been suspected of leaking proprietary company data to external parties. I sat there stunned. They were trying to frame me. Rachel and David had clearly gotten together and decided their best move was to discredit me before I could say anything. Make me look like a disgruntled employee, a security risk, someone who couldn't be trusted. It was actually kind of impressive in its ruthlessness, if it wasn't so infuriating. I asked to see the evidence. They fumbled, said it was still being gathered, that this was just a preliminary conversation. I asked who filed the complaint. They said they couldn't disclose that. I told them I wanted everything in writing and that I'd be contacting a lawyer. The meeting ended pretty quickly after that. I genuinely thought this couldn't get worse, but apparently we were just getting started. I went home that night and pulled together everything I had. Emails, calendar screenshots, text messages Rachel had sent me, asking me to handle personal errands during her meetings with David, photos that had synced to the company cloud, that showed the two of them in compromising positions, time-stamped and dated. I organized it all into a neat little folder, wrote a detailed timeline, and requested a meeting with the CEO. His name was Martin, and he was one of those old-school executives who'd built the company from the ground up and didn't tolerate nonsense. I'd interacted with him a few times, always professionally, and he'd always struck me as fair. I was banking on that now. The meeting was scheduled for the following Monday. I walked into his office with my folder and my laptop. Martin was there, along with the company's legal counsel. I laid it all out. I showed them the calendar, the emails, the photos. I explained the NDA Rachel had tried to force me to sign. I told them about the false complaint that had been filed against me. I was calm, factual, let the evidence speak for itself. Martin's face went through about 5 different emotions in the span of 10 minutes. Confusion, disbelief, anger, resignation. He looked at the legal counsel who was furiously taking notes. "This is," he said slowly, "a significant problem." That was an understatement. Within 3 days, Rachel and David were both fired. The company released a vague statement about leadership changes and thanked them for their service. No details, no public scandal, just a quiet removal. Jennifer Caldwell, David's wife, apparently demanded it be handled discreetly to avoid embarrassment to the board. I'm sure David's divorce wasn't quite as discreet. As for me, Martin called me back into his office about a week later. He thanked me for bringing the situation to his attention and said the company owed me an apology for the false allegations. Then he offered me Rachel's position. VP of Operations, full salary, benefits, the works. He said they needed someone they could trust, someone who clearly had integrity and wasn't afraid to do the right thing even when it was difficult. I accepted. It felt surreal, like I'd walked into someone else's life, but I'd earned it. I'd protected myself, stood my ground, and refused to be silenced or scapegoated. About 6 months into the new role, I got a LinkedIn request. It was from Rachel. No message, just the request. I stared at it for a long time, trying to figure out what she possibly thought would happen. Did she want to reconnect? Apologize? See if I'd give her a reference? I have no idea, and honestly, I didn't care enough to find out. I left it pending, still sitting there unanswered, a little digital reminder that some bridges aren't worth rebuilding. You'd think people would learn to cover their tracks better, but some secrets have a way of unraveling in the most humiliating ways possible. The notification popped up at 11 p.m. I was in bed scrolling through my phone, half asleep, when I saw it. "You've been added to Operation Wedding Escape." I blinked at the screen, thinking maybe I'd misread it. Operation Wedding Escape? I clicked into the group chat and saw the members. My fiancé Ryan, his 2 brothers Matt and Tyler, his best friend since high school, Derek, and me. Apparently added by accident. For a second I thought it was some kind of joke. Maybe they were planning a surprise for me, or doing something stupid for his bachelor party. Then I started reading the messages. The first one was from Matt. How do I convince him to call it off without losing the deposit? My stomach dropped. I scrolled up. The chat had been going for 3 days. 3 days of messages I was never supposed to see. Derek had written, "Just ghost her after the honeymoon LOL," with a bunch of laughing emojis. Tyler chimed in, "Dude, you should have bailed months ago. This is getting embarrassing." Ryan, my fiancé, the man I was supposed to marry in 6 weeks, had responded, I know, I just don't know how to do it without looking like the bad guy." Matt replied, "You are the bad guy, might as well own it." More laughing emojis, more jokes, more casual dismantling of the life we were supposed to build together. I sat there in bed reading every single message. 20 minutes of scrolling through their plan to get Ryan out of our engagement. They discussed timing. They discussed optics. They discussed whether he should wait until after the wedding to leave me, or just cancel now. Derek suggested he go through with it, take the honeymoon to Hawaii since it was already paid for, then break up with me when we got back. Tyler thought that was hilarious. Ryan said he'd think about it. They talked about me like I was a problem to solve, an inconvenience, a bad investment. At one point, Matt said, "She's not even that hot. Why did you propose?" Ryan didn't defend me. He just said, "I thought I loved her, man. I don't know." Past tense. Thought. Like I was already gone. Like I was already nothing. I screenshot everything, every single message. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped my phone twice. Then I left the group chat and just sat there staring at the wall. Ryan was in the living room watching TV. I could hear the game playing, hear him laughing at something. He had no idea. No idea I'd just read 3 days worth of messages about how much he wanted out. No idea his brother had accidentally added me to the group chat where they were plotting his escape from our marriage. I got out of bed and walked into the living room. He looked up and smiled at me. "Hey babe," he said, like everything was normal, like he hadn't just spent the last hour joking with his friends about ditching me after a free honeymoon. I stood there holding my phone. "We need to talk," I said. His smile faded a little. He asked what was wrong. I unlocked my phone, pulled up the screenshots, and handed it to him. I watched the color drain out of his face. He scrolled for maybe 5 seconds before he started stammering. "Babe, listen, this isn't. I mean, we were just." He couldn't even finish a sentence. I asked him which part wasn't real. The part where he wanted to ghost me after the honeymoon? The part where his brother asked how to get him out of the wedding? The part where he said he thought he loved me? Past tense? He tried the excuse that everyone tries. Cold feet. He said he was just freaking out, that all grooms get nervous, that he was joking around with his brothers to blow off steam. I asked him if joking around included planning an exit strategy from our marriage before we were even married. He went quiet. Then he tried to grab my hand. He said he loved me. He said he wanted to marry me. He said the chat didn't mean anything. I pulled my hand back and told him the wedding was off. Just like that, no yelling, no crying. I was too numb for either. He started panicking then, saying I was overreacting, that we could work through this, that he'd delete the chat and never talk to those guys again. I told him it was too late. I'd already made up my mind. He asked what I was going to tell people. I said I'd tell them the truth. That seemed to scare him more than losing me. I went back to the bedroom, locked the door, and started texting. I sent the screenshots to his mum first, then his dad, then his aunt who'd been helping plan the wedding, then my own family. I didn't write long explanations. I just sent the screenshots and said, "Wedding's off." His mum called me within 5 minutes, absolutely screaming. She said I was ruining her son's life over a stupid joke, that boys will be boys, that I was being dramatic and throwing away a good man over nothing. I hung up on her. Then I blocked her. Then I blocked Ryan. Then I blocked Matt, Tyler, and Derek. The next few days were chaos. My family was furious on my behalf. His family was furious at me. I had to call the venue, the caterer, the photographer, everyone we'd booked, and cancel. Some of them were understanding. Some of them kept the deposits anyway. I didn't care. I just wanted it over. But that wasn't even the worst part. A week later, Matt and Tyler sent me a joint text from a number I didn't have blocked. They apologized, said they felt terrible, said they didn't think Ryan would actually go through with leaving me, said the chat was just dumb guy talk and they never should have encouraged him. I didn't respond. What was I supposed to say? "Thanks for planning my fiancé's escape route from our marriage, but I appreciate the apology." I deleted the message and moved on. Months passed. I started putting my life back together. Started therapy. Started dating again, slowly. Then I saw her on social media. Ryan was engaged to someone named Ashley. They looked happy in the photos, big smiles, her showing off the ring. I felt nothing, no anger, no sadness, just this weird sense of relief that I'd dodged whatever that would have been. And here's where it gets absurd. I thought about Ashley, thought about how she probably had no idea what kind of person she was marrying, thought about that group chat, thought about how easily Ryan had plotted his way out of a relationship while pretending everything was fine. So I made a burner email account and sent her the screenshots. No message, no explanation, just the screenshots from Operation Wedding Escape. She called it off 2 weeks later. I know because Ryan's brother Matt posted some cryptic thing about how his brother couldn't catch a break. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt like I'd done what someone should have done for me if they'd known, warned her. Given her the information she needed to make her own choice. What she did with it was up to her. Ryan never found out it was me. As far as I know, he thinks Ashley just got cold feet or found out some other way. I'm fine with that. I don't need credit. I don't need closure. I just needed to make sure I wasn't the only one who knew who he really was. They basically built their own downfall, and I just gave them the platform to do it on. But sometimes betrayal doesn't come from a partner. It comes from the one person who's supposed to help you heal. My girlfriend had been seeing Dr. Phillips for 2 years. She swore by her. talked about her like she was some kind of miracle worker who changed her entire outlook on life. I was supportive. I thought therapy was great. She seemed happier, more self-aware, better at communicating. I even encouraged her to keep going when she mentioned maybe stopping because of the cost. I thought I was being a good partner. Turns out I was being documented. It started with a phone call I wasn't expecting. Dr. Phillips called me directly one afternoon, introduced herself like we were old friends, and asked if I'd be willing to meet her for coffee to discuss some concerns. My first thought was that something was seriously wrong with my girlfriend. Maybe she was in crisis and the therapist needed to loop me in. I agreed immediately, worried out of my mind. We met at a coffee shop near her office. She showed up with a leather portfolio and this warm, professional smile that should have felt reassuring but somehow didn't. She thanked me for coming, ordered some fancy latte, and then got straight to business. She said she wanted to talk to me about my role in my girlfriend's therapeutic journey. I nodded, still thinking this was about supporting her mental health. That's when Dr. Phillips opened her portfolio and slid a stack of papers across the table. She told me I was the subject of her doctoral dissertation. Just said it. Casual, like she was telling me the weather. Apparently, for the last year and a half, she'd been documenting our entire relationship as a case study in codependent dynamics. Every fight we'd had, every compromise, every moment of tension or resolution, all of it, catalogued and analyzed for her research. Without my knowledge, without my consent, I just sat there staring at her, trying to process what she was saying. I asked her how she even knew these details. She smiled and said my girlfriend had been incredibly cooperative in providing comprehensive information about our relationship dynamics. Cooperative. Like my girlfriend had been doing homework. I asked if my girlfriend knew I was being studied, and Dr. Phillips nodded like it was the most normal thing in the world. Of course she knew. They'd discussed it extensively. It was part of her treatment plan. Oh, so we're doing that now? I asked what kind of information she had. She started listing things, our arguments about money, my anxiety issues, my family history, even my medical information, stuff I'd told my girlfriend in confidence during vulnerable moments. All of it was in her research notes, categorized and cross-referenced. She had dates, quotes, behavioral patterns. She'd built an entire academic paper around my life without ever asking if that was okay. Then she told me why she'd called this meeting. She needed me to sign a waiver, retroactively. She wanted my written consent to use all the data she'd already collected. She explained that it was just a formality, that the research was anonymous, that it would really help her complete her doctorate. She slid the waiver across the table with a pen, like I was just going to sign away my privacy, because she asked nicely. I told her absolutely not. I wasn't signing anything. What she'd done was unethical at best and illegal at worst. She'd violated my privacy, my trust, and probably about a dozen professional codes of conduct. Her smile faded. She said she understood I was upset, but that I was overreacting. The research was valuable. It could help other couples. I was being short-sighted. I left the coffee shop and went straight home. My girlfriend was there, scrolling on her phone like nothing was wrong. I asked her if she knew I was Dr. Phillips's case study. She looked up and I could see it in her face. She knew. She'd always known. She tried to downplay it, said it wasn't a big deal, that Dr. Phillips had explained how the research would work, and she thought I'd be okay with it. I asked her when she was planning to mention this to me. She got defensive, said I was making it into a bigger thing than it was, that therapy is confidential and she has the right to discuss our relationship with her therapist. But that wasn't even the worst part. I asked her what exactly she'd told Dr. Phillips. She hesitated. I pressed. She told her about my panic attacks, about my estranged relationship with my father, about a medical issue I'd dealt with in college that I'd never told anyone else about. She'd given this woman my entire psychological profile, my trauma, my vulnerabilities, all so her therapist could write a dissertation. I felt completely violated. I told her I was reporting Dr. Phillips to the state licensing board. My girlfriend lost it, started yelling that I was overreacting, that I was going to ruin her therapy, that Dr. Phillips was the only person who'd ever really helped her. I said maybe she should have thought about that before turning me into research data. She called me selfish. I called her a liar. It spiraled from there. The next day I filed a formal complaint with the licensing board. I included everything: the phone call, the coffee meeting, the waiver she wanted me to sign. I even mentioned that my medical information had been discussed without my consent. They took it seriously, launched an investigation. Dr. Phillips tried to contact me twice, left voicemails saying we could work this out, that I was jeopardizing important research. I didn't respond. 3 months later, Dr. Phillips lost her license. The board found multiple ethical violations, not just with me, but with other patients too. Turned out I wasn't her only unauthorized case study. She'd been pulling this with several clients, documenting their partners and family members without consent. The whole thing was a mess. Her dissertation was pulled, her career was over. My girlfriend blamed me for all of it, said I'd ruined her therapy out of spite, that I couldn't handle someone analyzing our relationship because I didn't want to face the truth about my behavior. She actually tried to frame me as the villain in this situation. I ended the relationship immediately, packed my stuff, moved out, blocked her on everything. I was done. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. Months later, I got a subpoena. My ex was suing me for emotional distress. She claimed that my actions had caused her severe psychological harm, that losing her therapist had destabilized her mental health, that I'd acted maliciously to sabotage her treatment. She wanted damages. She wanted me to pay for the therapy she could no longer receive. The audacity was unreal. I hired a lawyer. We filed a motion to dismiss. It wasn't even close. The judge took one look at the case and threw it out. You can't sue someone for reporting legitimate ethical violations. You can't claim emotional distress because your therapist lost their license for breaking the law. My ex didn't even show up to the hearing. Her lawyer looked embarrassed to be there. The case was dismissed with prejudice. I never heard from her again. But the whole thing left me with this deep distrust of therapists that I'm still working through. I know not all of them are like Dr. Phillips. I know most of them follow the rules and actually care about ethics. But every time I think about going to therapy myself, I remember sitting in that coffee shop, listening to a licensed professional tell me she'd been studying me like a lab rat, and I just can't do it. This feels like a deleted scene from a sitcom, except it's real and nobody's laughing. And just when you think you've seen the worst of relationship manipulation, someone's family decides to get involved in the cruelest way imaginable. I thought it was sweet when his mum invited me to family dinner. Just me, she said. No Connor. She made it sound casual, like she wanted to get to know me better. Maybe do some girl talk without the guys around. I'd been dating Connor for almost a year, and his family had always been friendly enough, so I didn't think twice about it. I showed up with a bottle of wine and a smile, ready for what I assumed would be a nice evening. The second I walked in, something felt off. His mom greeted me at the door, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. She led me into the living room, and that's when I saw them. All of them. His dad sitting in the armchair like he was chairing a board meeting. Both siblings on the couch looking uncomfortable. And his grandmother perched in the corner, arms folded, staring at me like I'd personally offended her. They were arranged in a semicircle facing one empty chair. My chair, apparently. This wasn't a dinner. This was a tribunal. I sat down slowly, still holding the wine bottle, because nobody had offered to take it. I asked where Connor was, trying to keep my voice light even though my stomach was already sinking. His mom cleared her throat and folded her hands in her lap. We need to talk about you and Connor, she said. I waited for him to walk in from another room. I waited for this to make sense. He never showed up, and that's when it hit me. They were breaking up with me for him. His mom actually had notes, I'm not exaggerating. She pulled out a piece of paper from beside her chair and started reading like she was delivering a prepared statement. Connor cares about you very much, she began, but this relationship isn't working out the way he'd hoped. He doesn't want to hurt you, so we're stepping in to handle this conversation because we love him and want what's best for everyone involved. She kept going, something about different life paths and timing, and how I was a lovely girl, but not the right fit for their family. I just sat there, mouth open, trying to process the fact that my boyfriend's entire family had assembled to break up with me on his behalf, because apparently he couldn't be bothered to do it himself. His dad jumped in with some additions about how Connor had been stressed lately, and they didn't want this to drag out and cause more pain. His sister wouldn't make eye contact. His brother looked like he wanted to be literally anywhere else, and his grandmother just kept staring at me with this expression that said she'd known from day one I wasn't good enough. They expected me to just accept this, to nod along and quietly exit their son's life, while thanking them for their time. The level of disrespect was actually stunning. I sat there for maybe 30 seconds, just staring at them, waiting for someone to crack a smile and admit this was some weird joke. Nobody did, so I stood up, grabbed my coat, and looked directly at his mum. "Tell Connor he's a coward," I said. Then I walked out. Nobody followed me. Nobody apologized. I heard the door close behind me and stood in their driveway, shaking with anger and humiliation. I called Connor the second I got to my car. It went straight to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. He'd either turned off his phone or blocked me preemptively. I sent him a text instead. "Your family just dumped me for you. Grow up." The message turned green. He'd blocked my number. He'd actually blocked me. This man who told me he loved me, who talked about future plans and meeting my family and trips we'd take together, had sent his parents to break up with me and then blocked me so he wouldn't have to deal with the fallback. And here's where it gets absurd. I posted the whole story online that night. I didn't use names. I didn't tag anyone. I just wrote out exactly what had happened in a Reddit-style post and shared it on my social media. Within hours, his friends started recognizing the story. The details were too specific. Family dinner ambush. The mom with a literal script, the blocking immediately after. People started commenting, asking if this was about Connor. I didn't confirm or deny. I just let the post sit there while his friends tore him apart in the comments. They roasted him, called him spineless, asked what kind of grown man sends his mommy to break up with his girlfriend, shared their own stories about times he'd avoided confrontation or let other people handle his uncomfortable conversations. It turned into this whole thing where people who'd known him for years started seeing a pattern they'd overlooked before. His reputation took a nosedive in our social circle basically overnight. 3 days later, I got a letter in the mail. Official-looking envelope, law firm return address. I opened it expecting maybe some kind of apology or explanation. Instead, it was a cease and desist letter from his mother's attorney, demanding I remove my post, threatening legal action for defamation and harassment, claiming I was damaging Connor's reputation and causing emotional distress to their family. I read it twice and then I started laughing. The sheer audacity of this family. They ambushed me with a breakup intervention. Their son blocked me like a child, and now they were threatening to sue me for talking about it. I called a lawyer friend who confirmed what I already suspected. Truth isn't defamation. I hadn't used names. I hadn't made anything up. They had no case and they knew it. The letter was just intimidation, hoping I'd be scared enough to take the post down and disappear quietly like a good little ex-girlfriend. Instead, I framed it. Literally went to a frame shop, got a nice mat and everything, and hung that cease and desist letter on my wall. It's still there. Best conversation starter I've ever had. The post stayed up. Connor eventually deleted most of his social media. His mum apparently called some of my friends trying to do damage control, insisting I'd twisted the story and they were just trying to help. Nobody bought it. His siblings both reached out separately to apologize, saying they'd been uncomfortable the whole time but didn't know how to stop it. I appreciated that, but it didn't change anything. They'd still sat there and participated. Looking back, the whole thing was such a gift. I got to see exactly who Connor was before I wasted any more time on him. A man who couldn't handle a difficult conversation, who let his family run his life, who thought blocking someone was a valid conflict resolution strategy. I dodged a lifetime of that family inserting themselves into every major decision, of him hiding behind other people whenever things got hard, of being treated like an accessory they could just remove when I stopped fitting their vision. I'm dating someone new now, someone who actually communicates, someone whose family would never dream of pulling a stunt like that. And sometimes when friends come over and see the framed cease and desist letter, I tell them the whole story. It gets better every time. The looks on their faces when I get to the part about the intervention-style seating arrangement. The disbelief when I explain he blocked me before I could even respond. It's become this legendary tale in my friend group about the worst breakup method anyone's ever experienced. And honestly, I hope Connor hears about it every time. I hope it follows him. I hope every future girlfriend eventually hears the story and realizes what kind of family she's getting involved with. Family interference is one thing, but discovering your entire relationship was built on someone else's fantasy takes it to another level. We dated for 4 years. 4 years of my life with someone I genuinely thought I'd marry someday. We had the talks, made the plans, did all the things couples do when they're building toward forever. So when I found that dress on sale, this gorgeous custom gown marked down because of a cancelled order, I bought it. I knew it was premature. I knew we weren't engaged yet, but it was perfect. And the price was right, and I figured eventually we'd get there. I hung it in his closet since my apartment was tiny, and he had the space. Figured it would be safe there until we needed it. Then we broke up. It wasn't dramatic or explosive. We just grew apart, wanted different things, the usual story. I moved out over a weekend, packed up my stuff, and left. I was so focused on getting out and moving on that I completely forgot about the dress hanging in the back of his closet behind his winter coats. By the time I remembered, weeks had passed, and reaching out to get it back felt weird and complicated. So I just let it go. It was just a dress. I told myself I'd find another one when the time came with someone else. 2 years went by. I'd moved on, dated other people, barely thought about him anymore. Then a mutual friend sent me a photo with no context. Just a screenshot from Instagram. I opened it and my brain kind of short-circuited. It was my ex, at his wedding, looking happy and married and completely moved on, which was fine. I was happy for him, genuinely. Until I looked at the bride. She was wearing my dress, not a dress that looked similar, not the same style or color. My actual dress, the same intricate lace pattern on the bodice, the same alterations I'd had done to the hem, the same tiny detail on the back that I'd specifically requested. I zoomed in on the photo until it pixelated. It was definitely, unmistakably, the dress I'd left in his closet. My first reaction was just confusion. Who does that? Who lets their new wife wear their ex-girlfriend's wedding dress? Did he tell her? Did she know? Was this some kind of weird cost-saving measure? Or did he just conveniently forget to mention that the dress hanging in his closet belonged to someone else? I sat there staring at my phone, trying to process the absolute audacity of it all. I reverse image searched the wedding photos and found their wedding website. One of those cutesy domains with both their names. They had their registry linked, their love story posted, the whole production. I read through it and there was no mention of me, obviously. Just a sanitized version of his life where I'd apparently never existed. I found her Instagram from there. Public profile, hundreds of photos from the wedding, all the typical poses and moments. And in every single one where you could see the dress clearly, it was mine. I spent a full day debating what to do. Part of me wanted to just let it go. It was petty, right? It was just a dress I'd abandoned. But the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. That dress meant something to me. I'd bought it imagining a future that didn't happen, and now some stranger was wearing it in her supposedly perfect moment, with no idea that she was wearing another woman's dream. She deserved to know, so I created a burner account and sent her a message. Kept it simple. That dress was custom made for me. Ask your husband. Then I logged out and tried not to think about it. She didn't respond, but within hours, every single wedding photo disappeared from social media. Her Instagram went private. The wedding website went down. It was like they were trying to erase the whole thing. I figured that was the end of it. She'd confronted him, he'd admitted the truth, and they were dealing with it privately. I felt a little guilty, but mostly vindicated. At least she knew. And here's where it gets absurd. A week later, my phone rang. It was my ex. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. The second I picked up, he started screaming. Not talking loud, screaming, calling me every name he could think of, saying I'd ruined his marriage, asking why I couldn't just let him be happy. I let him rant for a minute before cutting him off. I asked him if he seriously thought giving his new wife his ex's wedding dress was a good idea. He went quiet. Then he said she'd found old photos of me wearing it during a fitting. Photos I'd sent him years ago when I was excited about finding it. She'd put two and two together and completely lost it. Apparently, they were now in counseling. Working through trust issues. She felt betrayed and lied to, which, fair. He felt ambushed and attacked, which, less fair considering he'd literally dressed his bride in another woman's gown. He tried to explain it away, said he'd forgotten it was mine, that it had just been hanging there, and his fiancée had tried it on and loved it, and he didn't think it mattered. Didn't think it mattered. Like the entire history attached to that dress was just irrelevant. I told him I wanted the dress back, or $3,000, which is what I'd paid for it. He sputtered something about how that was insane, how I'd abandoned it, how it was his now by default. I told him he had a week to decide, dress or money. Otherwise, I'd be happy to share those old photos publicly and let everyone know exactly whose wedding his wife had worn. He hung up on me. 3 days later, I got a check in the mail. $3,000, no note, no apology, just a check. I deposited it and immediately donated the entire amount to a women's shelter. I didn't need the money. I just needed him to understand that actions have consequences, and you don't get to rewrite history just because it's convenient. I heard through the grapevine that their marriage didn't last. She filed for divorce about 6 months later. I don't know if the dress was the final straw or just one of many issues, but I'm betting it didn't help. You can't build a future on someone else's past, especially when you've been lied to from the start. And honestly, she dodged a bullet. If he was willing to lie about something that obvious, that symbolic, imagine what else he'd lie about. The whole thing still feels surreal. I bought that dress imagining one future, and it ended up being the catalyst for someone else's divorce. There's probably a lesson in there about letting go of the past or material attachments, but mostly I just think some people have absolutely no sense of boundaries. You don't repurpose your ex's wedding dress. That's not frugal. That's unhinged. I've moved on completely now. I'm with someone who would never dream of recycling an ex's anything, let alone something that loaded with meaning. And if I ever get married, I'll buy a new dress, one with no history, no baggage, no chance of showing up in someone else's wedding photos, because apparently that's something you have to specify now. Speaking of things that should have stayed buried, let me tell you about the discovery that shattered someone's entire sense of identity. I was applying for a passport when I found out. Just a routine application, something I should have done years ago, but kept putting off. I'd finally booked a trip with friends, somewhere tropical with beaches and overpriced cocktails, and I needed the documentation. I filled out the forms, gathered my birth certificate from the filing cabinet, where my parents kept all the important papers, and sent everything in. 2 weeks later, I got a letter back. There was a discrepancy. The name on my birth certificate didn't match the name I'd been using my entire life. I read that letter 3 times, trying to make sense of it. My birth certificate said one name. My driver's license, my social security card, my college diplomas, everything else said something different. Not a typo, not a clerical error, 2 completely different last names. I thought maybe there'd been some kind of mix-up at the hospital, or my parents had changed it when they got married and forgot to tell me. I called my mum first, thinking she'd laugh and explain the boring administrative reason behind it. She didn't laugh. She went quiet. Then she said we needed to talk in person. I drove to their house that same night. My dad was already sitting at the kitchen table when I arrived, looking like he'd aged 10 years in the span of an afternoon. My mum sat down next to him, and they both just stared at me for a long moment. Then my dad said it. They'd legally changed our family name when I was 2 years old. Not because of marriage, not because of some clerical error. To escape their past. I asked them what that meant. My mum started crying. My dad took a breath and told me the whole story. Turns out, my dad had been involved in a major financial scandal back before I could even remember. He wasn't arrested, he wasn't charged with a crime, but he'd been part of a business that collapsed spectacularly, taking a lot of people's money with it. Investors lost everything, families were ruined, and even though my dad insisted he hadn't known what was happening, that he'd been a mid-level employee caught in someone else's scheme, nobody cared. Their reputation was destroyed, people threatened them, showed up at their house, sent letters, made calls. It got so bad they couldn't live normal lives anymore. So they moved states, filed paperwork to legally change our last name, and started over. New town, new identity, new life. They never told me. They figured if I didn't know, I couldn't accidentally let it slip. If I didn't know, I couldn't be hurt by it. They thought they were protecting me, and maybe when I was 2 years old they were. But I was 23 now. I'd been living under what essentially amounted to a fake identity for over 2 decades, and they'd never once thought to mention it. I asked them if they understood what this meant. My diplomas, my professional certifications, my entire documented existence was technically tied to a name that wasn't legally mine at birth. I'd have to go back and fix everything. And they just sat there, looking guilty and scared, like I was the one who'd done something wrong by finding out. My mum said they were sorry. My dad said they'd hoped I'd never have to know. I told them that wasn't how this worked. You don't get to rewrite someone's entire identity and then apologize when they discover the truth. But that wasn't even the worst part. I started researching. I pulled up old news articles about the scandal, found forum posts from people who'd lost money, who blamed my dad personally even though he'd never been the one in charge. Some of the things people wrote were vicious. They called him a thief, a liar, a coward, and whether or not those things were true, whether or not my dad had actually known what was happening, it didn't matter. The damage was done. Our old name was poisoned. That's why they'd changed it. That's why they'd run. I told my parents I was going to legally reclaim my birth name. I needed my documentation to match. I needed my life to make sense on paper. They begged me not to. My mom actually got on her knees and pleaded. She said it would ruin everything they'd built, that people would find me, that I'd be dragged into something that had nothing to do with me. My dad said I didn't understand how bad it had been, how much they'd sacrificed to give me a normal life, and maybe I didn't fully understand, but I understood enough. I understood that they'd made a choice for me without my consent, and now I was stuck cleaning up the mess. I filed the paperwork anyway. It took months. I had to provide documentation, sit for interviews, prove my identity in ways that felt invasive and exhausting. I had to update my social security card, my driver's license, my bank accounts, my insurance, everything. My college had to reissue my diplomas under my legal name. My employer had to update payroll. It was a bureaucratic nightmare, and every single step reminded me that my parents had put me in this position. And here's where it gets absurd. Once my legal name was updated and started appearing in public records, distant relatives began reaching out on social media. People I'd never heard of, cousins, aunts and uncles from my dad's side of the family. Some were kind. They said they'd wondered what happened to us, that they were glad to know I was okay. Others were not kind. They sent messages blaming my dad for things I still don't fully understand, asking if I knew what he'd done, telling me I should be ashamed of my family name. One person told me I had no right to use it after my parents had abandoned everyone. I didn't respond to most of them. What was I supposed to say? I didn't know these people. I didn't know their version of events. I didn't even know my own family's history until a passport application forced the truth into the open. I felt like I'd been dropped into the middle of someone else's life, expected to answer for crimes I didn't commit, and drama I hadn't been part of. It was exhausting. It was isolating, and it made me furious. Things went from bad to unhinged. My parents started calling me constantly, asking if I'd heard from anyone, warning me not to trust people who reached out, telling me I didn't understand the full story, that there were things they still couldn't tell me. I asked them what things. They wouldn't say, just vague warnings and half explanations that made everything worse. I started to realize that even now, even after everything, they were still lying to me. Maybe not outright, but by omission. There were pieces of this story they were never going to share, and I was supposed to just accept that. I stopped answering their calls. Then I stopped responding to their texts. Eventually, I told them I needed space, that I couldn't keep having the same circular conversation where they apologized for lying but refused to tell me the whole truth. My mum sent me a long email about how much they loved me, how hard they tried to give me a good life, how unfair I was being. I read it once and then deleted it. I don't speak to them anymore. I don't know if I made the right choice. I don't know if reclaiming my birth name was worth the chaos it caused, but I know I couldn't keep living a lie just because it was convenient for them. I know I deserve to understand my own history, even if that history was ugly and complicated. And I know that parents who truly love their kids don't build that love on a foundation of secrets and half-truths. I still get messages sometimes. From relatives, from people who knew my family before everything fell apart. Some want to reconnect. Some want answers I don't have. I've learned to ignore most of it. This isn't my burden to carry. I didn't choose this name. I didn't choose this past. But I'm stuck with it now, and I'm doing the best I can. But at least they were trying to protect you, unlike some people who steal your identity for their own gain. I graduated summa cum laude and posted photos in my cap and gown. It was a proud moment, 4 years of late nights, stress crying in the library, surviving on coffee and spite. I'd earned that degree, and I wanted to share it. So I posted the photos, wrote a little caption about how grateful I was, tagged my parents, and figured that was that. A nice little milestone documented for posterity. Then my cousin sent me a screenshot. I was at dinner with friends when my phone buzzed. The message just said, you need to see this. I opened it and stared at my screen for a solid 10 seconds, trying to process what I was looking at. It was my aunt, my dad's sister. She'd taken my graduation photos, the exact ones I'd posted hours earlier, and reposted them to her own Facebook page. But here's the thing. The caption read, "So proud of my daughter. She worked so hard for this. I can't believe my baby girl is all grown up." My daughter, not my niece, not my cousin's cousin or family member, or any other accurate descriptor. Her daughter, like she'd raised me, like she'd paid for a single semester of tuition, or shown up to a single parent-teacher conference, or done literally anything that would warrant claiming me as her kid. I don't even live with her. I've never lived with her. We see each other maybe twice a year at family gatherings, where she mostly ignores me in favor of talking about herself. I called her immediately. My hands were shaking, half from anger and half from sheer disbelief. She picked up on the third ring, all cheerful and casual like nothing was wrong. I didn't even say hello. I just asked her what the hell she thought she was doing, posting my photos and calling me her daughter. She laughed, actually laughed like I'd told a joke. "Oh, sweetie, it's just Facebook. You're like a daughter to me. I'm so proud of you. I just wanted to share." Like a daughter to her. I asked her to name one thing she'd done for me in the last 4 years. One thing. She went quiet for a second, then got defensive, said I was being dramatic, that I should be flattered she was proud of me, that family supports family. I told her to take the post down. She said she would, but her tone made it clear she thought I was overreacting. I hung up and checked her page an hour later. The posts were still up, she hadn't changed a thing. I reported the post to Facebook. Impersonation, stolen content, whatever categories seemed relevant. Facebook reviewed them and did absolutely nothing. Apparently stealing someone's life milestones and pretending they're your own doesn't violate community standards. Cool. Great system. So I did the only thing I could think of. I started commenting. On every single post she made with my photos, I wrote the same thing. "I'm not her daughter. These are my graduation photos that she took without permission. This is stolen. Simple, factual, public." Her friends were horrified. People started asking questions in the comments. Who was I? Why was I saying this? Was this some kind of family drama? My aunt tried to delete my comments, but I kept posting them. She tried to block me from commenting, but by then other people had already seen and were asking her directly what was going on. The whole thing spiraled faster than she could control it. And here's where it gets absurd. She deleted everything. All the posts, all the photos, wiped her page clean of any evidence. Then she blocked me. Not just on Facebook, on Instagram, everywhere. Like I was the problem. Like I'd done something wrong by not letting her steal my accomplishments and parade them around for internet validation. But she didn't stop there. She called my mum. She called my dad. She called other relatives. She told them I was jealous of her, that I was seeking attention, that I'd always been dramatic, and now I was trying to ruin her reputation over something harmless. She painted herself as the victim, said she'd just been trying to celebrate my success, and I'd turned it into some ugly confrontation. And my mum believed her. My own mother, who'd been at my graduation, who'd taken some of those photos herself, actually called me and asked if I could just let it go. She said my aunt was hurt, that family was more important than Facebook drama, that I was making a big deal out of nothing. I tried to explain. I sent her the screenshots, showed her the caption, pointed out that my aunt had literally called me her daughter when I'm not. My mum just kept saying it wasn't worth the fight. I felt like I was losing my mind. This woman had stolen my photos, lied about our relationship, and was now playing the victim, and people were buying it. So I did what I should have done from the start. I posted a side-by-side, my original graduation post with the real caption and date, next to screenshots of my aunt's version with her fake claims. I added actual family photos, pictures of my real parents at my graduation, documentation that made it crystal clear who I actually belonged to. I didn't write some long explanation or emotional call-out. I just posted the evidence and let it speak for itself. The response was immediate. People who'd seen my aunt's posts started putting the pieces together. Her friends, the ones who'd commented congratulations and heart emojis on her stolen photos, started quietly unfollowing her. A few even reached out to me privately to apologize for not realizing sooner. My aunt's reputation took a hit. Not a huge one, she's not some public figure or anything, but enough that people in her social circle started looking at her differently. She went from being the proud mum celebrating her daughter's achievement to the weird aunt who stole someone else's moment for internet clout. And honestly, that was probably worse for her than any direct confrontation could have been. Then came the breaking point. Months later, after the whole thing had died down and I'd moved on with my life, I got a message from her. Not an apology, not an acknowledgement of what she'd done, just a short message asking me to let it go. She said we were family, that holding grudges wasn't healthy, that she hoped we could move past this. The audacity was genuinely impressive. She'd stolen my photos, lied about our relationship, tried to turn my family against me, and now she wanted me to just forgive and forget because it was convenient for her. I read the message 3 times. I typed out a response, deleted it, typed another one, deleted that too. Eventually, I just closed the message and left it on read. I didn't block her. I didn't respond. I just let it sit there, unanswered. A little reminder that some things don't get to be smoothed over with a casual request for peace. She never apologized, never admitted she was wrong, and I never responded to that message. Because here's the thing, forgiveness isn't something you're owed just because you're family. It's something you earn by actually acknowledging the harm you caused and making a genuine effort to fix it. My aunt did neither. She just wanted me to pretend it never happened so she could go back to her life without the uncomfortable weight of her own actions following her around. I graduated summa cum laude. I worked my ass off for that degree, and I'll be damned if I let someone else take credit for it, family or not. That moment was mine. She doesn't get to rewrite that story just because she wants to look good on Facebook. At least that was just social media. Some people's lives cost actual money, and lots of it. I trusted my mom to help me with my FAFSA. Big mistake. Huge. The kind of mistake that comes back to haunt you in ways you never see coming. I was a sophomore in college, stressed about classes and deadlines, and she offered to help handle the financial aid paperwork. She'd done it my freshman year without any issues, so I didn't think twice. I gave her my login information, signed the forms she told me to sign, and went back to worrying about my organic chemistry midterm. Everything seemed fine until I got a letter from the bursar's office. It was one of those official university envelopes that immediately makes your stomach drop. I opened it expecting maybe a reminder about something minor. Instead, it said my tuition was overdue. Like, seriously overdue. I stared at the number on the page and felt my brain short-circuit. That couldn't be right. My financial aid had covered everything. I'd checked. I'd planned around it. I called the bursar's office immediately, convinced it was some kind of clerical error. The woman on the phone pulled up my account and sounded genuinely confused. She told me the loan money had been disbursed months ago. It should have gone directly to pay my tuition and fees, with the rest deposited into my bank account for living expenses. I asked where it went instead. She said it went to the account on file, my bank account. I thanked her, hung up, and checked my banking app with shaking hands. Empty. Well, not completely empty. I had like $47, but the thousands of dollars that should have been there from my student loans, gone, vanished. I scrolled through my transaction history trying to find some explanation. There was a deposit from the loan servicer, dated exactly when the woman said. Then, 2 days later, a withdrawal for almost the entire amount. Not to the university, not to anything that made sense, just gone. I called my mum. She answered on the 3rd ring, sounding cheerful. I asked her if she knew anything about my student loan money. There was a pause. Then her tone changed completely. Got defensive in that way that immediately tells you someone's been caught. "Why are you asking me that?" she said. "Because $12,000 is missing from my account and I'm about to get kicked out of school," I told her. Another pause, longer this time. Then she said I borrowed it. Just like that. Casual. Like she'd borrowed a cup of sugar. "I borrowed it. I'll pay you back." I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because my brain couldn't process what I was hearing. "You borrowed my student loans," I repeated. "Yes," she said, getting more defensive. "I needed it. I'm going through a hard time. You know that." I asked what she needed $12,000 for. She hesitated, then admitted she'd used it to pay for her honeymoon. Her honeymoon, with Greg, her new husband, a guy she'd known for 6 months and married in a courthouse ceremony 3 weeks earlier. A guy I'd met exactly twice. She'd taken my student loan money, money I was going to have to pay back with interest for the next decade, and spent it on a trip to the Bahamas with her brand new husband. I asked her if she was serious. She got angry then, said I didn't understand how hard things had been for her, that she deserved to be happy after everything she'd been through, that I was being selfish and ungrateful, for not wanting her to steal my student loans. I hung up on her, sat there for a minute trying to decide what to do. Then I called the loan servicer, explained the situation to 3 different people before finally getting transferred to someone in their fraud department. I gave them every detail, the timeline, the withdrawals, my mother's access to my account. They told me they'd launch an investigation and that I should file a report with my school as well. What happened next? Nobody saw it coming. The investigation moved faster than I expected. The loan servicer froze the account and started demanding documentation from my mother. She called me screaming, asking how I could do this to her, how I could try to get her in trouble when she was family. I told her she'd stolen from me. That family doesn't steal. She hung up on me. The school got involved. They put a hold on my account, which meant I couldn't register for next semester's classes until this got resolved. I had to meet with a financial aid counselor and explain the entire situation. It was humiliating, having to admit that my own mother had taken my money, that I'd been stupid enough to give her access. The counselor was sympathetic but firm. They needed the money returned or I'd have to reapply for emergency aid and hope it got approved. My mom was eventually forced to return the money. I don't know where she got it from. Maybe Greg paid it. Maybe she took out a credit card. I didn't ask and I didn't care. The loan servicer reinstated my account. The school cleared my balance, but I still had to go through the entire financial aid process again because my timeline was thrown off. Had to fill out additional forms, provide extra documentation, jump through hoops to prove I was a legitimate student who actually needed the money for school. Things went from bad to unhinged when my mom started telling people her version of events. She called my aunts, my grandparents, anyone who would listen. Told them I'd turned on her during a hard time, that she'd borrowed a little money and I'd tried to get her arrested, that I was cruel and heartless. Some of them believed her. I got calls from family members asking why I was being so harsh, why I couldn't just help my mother out. I stopped answering. Our relationship never recovered. I kept her blocked on everything, changed my passwords, made sure she had zero access to any part of my life. She tried reaching out a few times through other people, sent messages saying she was sorry, that she wanted to fix things. But sorry doesn't give me back the months of stress. Sorry doesn't fix the hit to my credit when my tuition was late. Sorry doesn't undo the fact that she chose a vacation with a man she barely knew over her daughter's education. I graduated 3 years later with honors, full academic scholarship by that point, because I'd worked my tail off to make sure I never had to rely on anyone again. I walked across that stage, got my diploma, and celebrated with the friends who'd actually supported me. I didn't invite my mum, didn't tell her when the ceremony was, didn't send her a photo. She found out through Facebook and sent me a long text about how hurt she was, how she'd sacrificed so much for me, and I couldn't even include her in my graduation. I deleted it without reading the whole thing. She tells people I abandon her, that I'm ungrateful, that she did her best and I threw her away over money. Let her tell whatever story makes her feel better. I know the truth. I know that when I needed her to be a parent, she chose herself, and I know that I don't owe her forgiveness just because we share DNA. The level of entitlement it takes to steal your kid's education funding for a vacation is genuinely staggering. And if you think parents are bad with money, wait until you hear about the business partner who was hiding a whole second life. My dad traveled constantly for work. That's what he always told us. 3 weeks out of the month, sometimes more. He was a consultant, he said. Big corporate clients, important meetings, had to be on site. My mum complained about it sometimes, but she'd accepted it as part of their life together. 30 years of marriage, most of it with him on the road. We'd gotten used to his absence. It was just normal. Then he had a heart attack, massive one. Collapsed in a grocery store parking lot somewhere in Ohio. The hospital called his emergency contact, a woman named Claire. Not my mum, not me. Claire. I didn't know that when I got the call from the hospital saying my father had been admitted and was in critical condition. I just knew I needed to get there. I drove 4 hours straight, called my mum from the road, told her what happened. She said she'd leave as soon as she could. I got to the ICU and asked for his room number. The nurse gave me this weird look, hesitated, then told me where to go. I walked in and found a woman sitting by his bed. She was holding his hand, crying quietly, mascara running down her face. My dad was unconscious, hooked up to monitors and IVs. The woman looked up when I entered. She stood, wiped her eyes, and introduced herself. "I'm Claire," she said. "I'm his wife." I just stood there. Wife. The word didn't make sense. My mom was his wife. This woman, this stranger, was sitting in a hospital room, calling herself his wife. I told her there must be some mistake, that my mother was his wife, that I was his daughter. She looked at me with this expression I'll never forget. Sadness and guilt, and something else I couldn't name. She said she knew who I was. She knew about my mom, about our family. She'd known for 12 years. 12 years. My dad had been married to this woman for 12 years. They had a house together 2 states over. She thought they were happy. She thought he traveled for work too, just in the opposite direction. He'd built an entire second life, complete with a second wife, and neither family knew about the other. Except Claire knew about us. She'd always known. He'd told her we were his previous family, that the marriage had fallen apart, but they'd stayed legally tied for tax reasons or insurance or some other lie that made sense in the moment. I called my mom, told her not to come. Then I told her why. I heard her voice break over the phone. She didn't believe me at first, thought I was confused, that this woman was mistaken or lying. I put Claire on the phone. I don't know what was said. I stepped out into the hallway and tried to breathe. When I came back, Claire was crying again, and my mom had hung up. But that wasn't even the worst part. My mom did come. She drove 6 hours in silence, probably running through every moment of the last 3 decades, trying to figure out where the lie had started. She walked into that ICU room, and it was like watching a bomb go off in slow motion. My mum looked at Claire. Claire looked at my mum. My dad was still unconscious, blissfully unaware of the reckoning happening at his bedside. My mum asked Claire how long. Claire said 12 years. My mum asked if there were others. Claire said she didn't know. My mum asked if he loved her. Claire started crying harder and said she thought so. My mum laughed. It was this horrible broken sound. Then she started yelling. Not screaming, just this cold, controlled fury that was somehow worse. She told Claire exactly what kind of man she'd married, told her about the life he'd had with us, told her about the vacations, the anniversaries, the moments he'd been there, and the many more he hadn't. Claire tried to defend him, said he was a good man who'd made mistakes. My mum said good men don't build entire fake lives. That's when hospital security showed up. Someone had complained about the noise. A nurse asked us to take it outside. My mom refused to leave, said she had every right to be there. Claire said the same thing. Legally, they were both right. They were both his wife. The security guards tried to mediate. It was chaos. 2 women claiming the same husband, both with marriage certificates to prove it, both demanding to stay by his side. I stood in the corner watching this nightmare unfold and realized my dad had created this. Every bit of it. The pain, the confusion, the humiliation. He'd done this on purpose, methodically, for over a decade. My dad woke up 2 days later. Both marriages were already over. Claire had called a lawyer from the hospital, filed for divorce before he even regained consciousness. My mum did the same. I visited him once after he stabilized. He tried to explain, tried to say he loved both of them, that it wasn't about replacing anyone, that he'd gotten in too deep and didn't know how to get out. I told him he could have tried the truth at any point in 12 years. He said it would have destroyed everyone. I said he'd destroyed everyone anyway, just slower. Things went from bad to unhinged when both divorce cases went to court. I testified in both, confirmed timelines, confirmed what I knew and when I knew it. Watching my dad sit there while 2 separate judges dissolved 2 separate marriages was surreal. Claire got the house they'd shared. My mom got the house I grew up in. He got nothing but legal fees and the knowledge that he'd obliterated 2 families for the sake of whatever selfish impulse had driven him to do this in the first place. After everything settled, my dad tried to reconcile with me. Sent letters, left voicemails, showed up at my apartment once. I told him I had no father, that the man I thought was my dad had never actually existed. He was just a character someone had played convincingly for 30 years, The real person was a stranger I wanted nothing to do with. He sends me birthday cards now, every year. They show up in my mailbox with return addresses from whatever state he's living in currently. I don't open them. I burn them. Every single one. It's petty maybe, but it's the only closure I get. Watching those cards turn to ash and knowing he'll never get the reconciliation he thinks he deserves. You almost have to admire the audacity, except there's nothing admirable about it. Just a man who wanted two lives and didn't care who he hurt to have them. But family secrets don't always stay hidden forever. Sometimes they come out in the worst way imaginable, like when someone's charity work turns out to be anything but charitable. My boyfriend volunteered at a youth center every Saturday. He'd been doing it for over a year, long before we even started dating. He was passionate about it too, always talking about giving back to the community, making a difference in kids' lives, being a role model. I thought it was one of his best qualities. He'd come home exhausted but fulfilled, telling me stories about the kids he mentored, the programs they were running, how rewarding it all was. I was proud of him. I bragged about him to my friends. Look at my boyfriend, out here changing lives while most guys are sleeping off hangovers on Saturday mornings. I never went with him. He said the center had strict policies about unregistered volunteers, background checks, all that. Made sense. I didn't push it. I trusted him. Saturdays became our thing where he'd do his volunteer work, and I'd use the time to catch up on errands, see friends, have some me time. It worked. We were happy. Or at least I thought we were. Then I saw the post. I was scrolling Instagram one night, just mindlessly tapping through stories when I came across the youth center's official page. They'd posted a photo from some weekend event, and there he was, my boyfriend, smiling at the camera, with another woman, her arm wrapped around his waist, his arm over her shoulders, both of them looking comfortable, familiar, happy. The caption read, "Our favorite couple volunteers," with a bunch of heart emojis. I stared at my phone, read the caption again. Couple. They called them a couple. I zoomed in on the photo, looking for anything that might explain this away. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe the social media person just worded it weird. Then I saw it. The necklace. She was wearing a necklace I'd given him for his birthday. A custom piece, his initials engraved on a small silver pendant. I'd saved up for it. He'd loved it. Said he'd never take it off. Apparently, he'd just passed it along to someone else. I felt sick. My hands were shaking. I took a screenshot, then another. Then scrolled through the center's page looking for more photos. Found a dozen. Him and her at different events over the past 6 months. Always together. Always looking like a couple. Comments from other volunteers calling them cute, saying they were relationship goals. Someone even wrote, "When's the wedding?" He'd replied with a laughing emoji. I didn't confront him that night. I couldn't. I needed to see it for myself. So the next Saturday, I didn't tell him I was coming. I just drove to the youth center, parked across the street, and walked in. The front desk person greeted me cheerfully, asked if I needed help. I said I was looking for my boyfriend, gave his name. She smiled and pointed toward the break room, said he and his girlfriend were probably on their lunch break. His girlfriend. She said it so casually. Like it was common knowledge. I walked to the break room. The door was half open. I could hear them talking, laughing about something. I pushed the door open fully. They were sitting close on a couch, her head on his shoulder, his hand on her knee. They both looked up when I walked in. He went pale. She looked confused. I asked who she was. She said her name was Monica. Asked who I was. I told her I was his girlfriend of 2 years. Her face crumpled. The room went silent. My boyfriend started stammering, trying to talk, trying to explain. I held up my hand. I wasn't talking to him. I looked at Monica and asked how long they'd been together. She said 8 months. 8 months of overlap. 8 months of him splitting his time between us, playing the devoted boyfriend to both. She had no idea I existed. Neither did anyone at the center. They all thought she was his girlfriend because that's what he'd told them. What happened next? Nobody saw it coming. Monica started crying. Not quiet tears, full sobbing. She looked at him and asked if it was true. He tried to deny it, said I was crazy, that I was some ex who wouldn't leave him alone. I pulled out my phone and showed her photos. Us on vacation last month. Us at his family's Thanksgiving. Us in his apartment, his arm around me, both of us smiling. Monica's face hardened. She stood up, looked at him with this expression of pure disgust, and walked out. I followed her. We stood in the parking lot, two strangers connected by the same liar. She apologized to me. I told her she had nothing to apologize for. We were both victims here. She asked if I was okay. I said I didn't know yet, asked if she was. She laughed bitterly and said no. We exchanged numbers. I don't know why. Maybe because we were the only two people who understood what the other was feeling. My boyfriend came running out, calling after both of us, begging, trying to explain. I told him to lose my number, get his stuff out of my apartment, and never contact me again. Monica told him worse. We got in our cars and left him standing there in the parking lot, looking like his world had just collapsed. Good. Let it. I cried the whole drive home, not because I missed him, because I felt stupid. 2 years, 2 years of my life with someone who was living a double life every single Saturday. How many lies had he told? How many times had he looked me in the eye and fed me some story about the kids at the center, about his passion for volunteering, when really he was just maintaining his other relationship? A week later, Monica texted me, asked if I wanted to get coffee. I almost said no. What was the point? But something made me say yes. We met at a cafe, and it was awkward at first. Then she started talking, and I started talking, and we compared notes. Turns out his lies were even more elaborate than I'd thought. He'd told her I was his sister. That's why we had photos together. He'd told me she was just a fellow volunteer he barely knew. He'd managed holidays by telling each of us he was visiting family in different states. He'd juggled our schedules, our emotions, our trust, like it was all just a game. We laughed about it. Not because it was funny, but because the alternative was crying, and we were both tired of crying. Monica was cool, smart, funny. We had a lot in common, which made sense considering we'd both fallen for the same manipulative guy. We stayed in touch, started hanging out, became actual friends. Things went from bad to unhinged about 3 months later. Monica texted me a screenshot. He'd messaged her, a long paragraph about how he missed her, how he'd made a terrible mistake, how he wanted to make things right. He said he'd ended things with me, which was a lie since I'd ended things with him. He said he was in therapy now, working on himself, becoming a better person. He wanted another chance. Monica and I met up that night. We crafted a response together. She sent him a photo, the two of us, sitting at a restaurant, smiling. The caption read, "Upgraded." He didn't respond, blocked us both immediately. We ordered another round of drinks and toasted to dodging the same bullet. I don't talk to him anymore. Don't think about him much either. But I still talk to Monica. We grab dinner every few weeks, text each other memes, vent about work. She's one of my closest friends now. It's weird how that worked out. We bonded over betrayal and came out the other side better for it. You almost have to admire the audacity. The man really thought he could maintain 2 full relationships indefinitely and nobody would ever notice. The logistics alone are impressive in the worst way possible. And finally, let me leave you with a story that proves nighttime isn't always for sleeping. Sometimes it's for secrets. My husband had terrible insomnia, so he started using a sleep app that records overnight audio. One of those programs that's supposed to track your sleep patterns, catch you snoring, monitor if you're getting enough rest. He'd been struggling for months, tossing and turning, waking up exhausted every morning. When he told me he was going to try the app, I thought it was a great idea. Anything to help him finally get some decent sleep. I even helped him set it up the first night, made sure it was recording properly, told him I hoped it would give him some answers. It gave me answers instead, just not the ones either of us expected. A few weeks into using the app, he mentioned casually that he'd been listening to some of the recordings, and they were pretty boring. Lots of silence, some rustling, occasional snoring. He said it was kind of pointless, but he figured he'd keep trying it for a while longer. I didn't think much of it. Then one night I couldn't sleep. He was out cold next to me, and I was wide awake staring at the ceiling. I grabbed his phone from the nightstand, thinking I'd listen to one of his recordings to see if the monotony would bore me to sleep. I put in his passcode, opened the app, and scrolled through the recordings. Picked one from a few nights earlier at random. The first hour was exactly what he'd described. Silence, some movement, nothing interesting. I was about to turn it off when I heard his voice, clear as day, not mumbling or sleep-talking in that incoherent way people do. He was having a conversation. At 2:47 in the morning, my husband said, "I miss you. I wish you were here." My blood went cold. I sat up in bed, pulled the phone closer, turned the volume down so I wouldn't wake him. I kept listening. There was a pause, like he was waiting for a response, even though no one else was in the room. Then he said, "I know, soon, I promise." My hands started shaking. I backed up the recording and listened again. Same words, same tone. He sounded awake. He sounded lucid. He sounded like he was talking to someone specific. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I sat in the bathroom with his phone and listened to weeks of recordings, and what I found destroyed me. Every single night, around the same time, he would start talking to someone named Vanessa. Actual conversations, like he was on the phone with her except he wasn't. He'd tell her about his day, complain about work, talk about me, about our marriage, about how unhappy he was. He made plans, talked about leaving me, discussed logistics like he was narrating his thoughts out loud, rehearsing what he'd say to her when they were actually together. At first I thought maybe he really was sleep talking. Maybe this was some kind of subconscious thing, dreams bleeding into reality, his mind processing stress in weird ways, but the details were too specific. He mentioned places, dates, things they'd done together. In one recording, he talked about a restaurant they'd gone to, described the food, laughed about something funny that had happened. You don't dream in that kind of detail. You don't sleep talk with that much clarity and consistency. I confronted him the next morning, played him one of the recordings right there at the breakfast table, watched his face go pale as he heard his own voice talking about Vanessa, saying he couldn't wait to see her again. He stammered something about sleep talking, insisted he didn't remember any of it, said it must be some kind of weird sleep disorder. He tried to take the phone from me. I pulled it back and told him to stop lying. That's when everything unraveled. I went through his phone while he sat there frozen, found Vanessa in his contacts, found text messages going back months, found photos, selfies of them together, pictures of hotel rooms, receipts for dinners and weekend trips. She lived 3 hours away. He'd been visiting her on work trips that weren't actually work trips. Every time he told me he had to go out of town for a conference or client meeting, he was with her. The recordings made sense now. He wasn't sleep talking. He was staying up after I fell asleep, lying there in the dark next to me, talking to her in his head because he couldn't actually call her without waking me up. The app had caught him processing his double life out loud, probably not even realizing he was doing it. He'd basically been confessing every night and didn't even know it. He tried every excuse, said it wasn't serious, said he'd been confused, going through something, didn't know what he wanted, said Vanessa didn't mean anything, that he loved me, that he'd end it immediately if I'd just give him another chance. I told him I wanted a divorce. He switched tactics, started saying I'd violated his privacy by listening to his recordings, that I'd invaded his personal space, that I had no right to go through his phone. The gaslighting was almost impressive in its desperation. I told him he'd violated our marriage. That privacy didn't apply when you're literally cheating on your spouse and confessing to it in recorded audio every single night. I took the phone, exported every recording that mentioned Vanessa, and saved them to my own devices. Then I played them for his family, his parents, his brother. I wanted them to hear it directly from him, in his own words, so he couldn't spin some version of events where I was the unreasonable one. They were horrified. His mom actually cried. His dad asked him how he could do this, how he could lie like that. His brother just sat there shaking his head. My husband tried to minimize it even then, said I was being dramatic, that marriages go through rough patches. His mom told him to shut up. I left after that. Didn't want to stick around for whatever family reckoning was about to happen. The divorce was brutal. He fought me on everything, the house, the savings, the division of assets, tried to claim I'd somehow driven him to cheat with my behavior, my expectations, my whatever. His lawyer actually tried to argue that the recordings were inadmissible as evidence because they were obtained without his knowledge. My lawyer shut that down pretty quickly. The recordings were from his own device, his own app, his own choice to use it. He'd essentially documented his own affair. I kept the house, got a fair settlement, watched him move out with his boxes and his guilt and his excuses. He married Vanessa 6 months later. I saw the announcement on social media, posted by one of his friends who hadn't blocked me yet. They looked happy in the photo. Good for them, I guess. They deserve each other. And here's the thing. I sleep better now than I ever did with him. No more lying awake wondering why he was so distant. No more making excuses for why he seemed checked out of our life together. No more sleep app running in the background, quietly recording evidence of a man who'd already left his marriage in every way except physically. Just silence. Peace. The kind of rest you can only get when you're not sleeping next to a liar every night. Truth has a funny way of surfacing, even when people think they're being careful. And sometimes all it takes is a sleep app and a restless night to expose everything someone's been hiding in the dark. And that wraps up tonight's journey through 15 of the wildest Reddit stories the internet has to offer. From secret jail time to double lives, fake identities to stolen dreams, these stories remind us that truth really is stranger than fiction. If you've made it this far into the chaos, you're officially part of the crew. Drop a comment and let me know which story hit the hardest, and don't forget to subscribe for more drama, betrayal, and unbelievable true stories. Sweet dreams, everyone, and remember, no matter how messy your life feels right now, at least you're not secretly married to two people or stealing your kids' student loans for a vacation. Sleep well, and I'll see you in the next one.